Welcome to Life Lessons in Lattes, Men's Edition. Our questions, their answers. I am your host, Lanisha Porter, and the author of Maximizing Her, Navigating Life After Girlhood, which this show is predicated on. Last season, we did Women's Edition, and it was powered by the stories and the narratives and the wisdoms coming from feminine just beauties who I admire. This season, I thought to give a platform to the men so that they have a fair chance of answering the questions that belong to women, giving them a fair chance to share their answers. I am joined here with one of my best friends. We've been friends since the first grade, so it's been such a pleasure to see him grow from boyhood into manhood. I would like to welcome to the show all the way from Dallas, Texas, Mr. Jason Jewell. Jason, how are you?
Doing good, doing good. Glad to be here. Glad to get to defend ourselves per se, but excited to engage in a conversation about some of the things that go through our heads or don't.
Oh, I love how you said that. Well, without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. You are now tuning in to episode 4, which is predicated on chapter 4 of my book. It's called Overcoming Your First Heartbreak. Heartbreak is something that I think we have all been through, and boy, is it a task getting over it. So, Jason, I have questions for you today, and I just want you to be truthful, authentic. The men on this show have honored the task by just leaving nothing on the table, saying everything that needs to be said. So I trust that you will do the same. My question for you: what empowers men to put themselves first without forethought or loyalty to others?
Forethought or loyalty to others. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's different things for different people. Obviously, not gonna pretend that all men are alike, but obviously we do have some similarities, and I think it comes down to a couple different factors for everybody. One of those, I think, is I would say it comes down to kind of 3 things. Sometimes it's morals, sometimes it's stupidity, and sometimes it's socialization. All right, and so I think over time, a lot of men have seen either other men do things wrong, and you usually have 2 reactions to that. It's either A, I saw them do it, so I can do it, or 2, I saw them do it, and so I know better than to ever do that. Okay, and so you are either, especially with negative behaviors, you either kind of begin to justify the behavior because you've seen the behavior, or you swing to the total opposite and you've seen the effects of said behavior, and you say, one thing I know is that I don't ever want to be that or do that. And so I think a lot of times it just comes down to that kind of swing. But I also think that in a lot of ways it comes down to, in general, men are socialized to be more independent. Men are socialized to not really think about each other and more so what needs to be done. And so that occurs in a lot of different realms. And so I think it bleeds over to relationships as well. And so when we're working, when we're out trying to provide, it's all about what I have to do. And so then when things go wrong and there are other situations, we still have that I have to make sure that I take care of me so that I can take care of others too. And so sometimes that's a general great thing, and then sometimes it can be a very selfish thing.
I have to challenge you on that. Okay, from my experience and from some of the experiences of my girlfriends, and I think Michelle Obama even said it once. She said how men are raised, excuse me, daughters are raised and we coddle our sons. And so when you say that men are, expected to be more independent, I have found through my experience that that's not the case. I feel like most men are allowed to have some level of handicap and expectation that they'll get married and the woman will pick up. What would you say to that?
I would say you're absolutely right, but I think that also lends itself to that point in the sense that there are not always consequences for actions.
Okay, that's fair.
So for men, sometimes marriage is an afterthought. And then for others, it's like, it's just going to happen. And it'll happen when it happens, whatever. And so for a lot of women, it's more so this thought of like, this is a thing that kind of needs to happen or that I expect to happen, I want to happen. And so it's higher on the priority list. And so then the way that you treat people has to kind of be higher on the priority list as well. You can't just run around making it an afterthought if you plan to marry someone. But if it's just is what it is, then you can do whatever you want to do. And when it works. And when it doesn't, it doesn't. And we'll just move on to the next one. Because I don't really have to think about it yet. Now, there probably will become a day where you have to think about it. And I think that's why you often see a change over time with men as well.
So would you say it's a fair assessment to say that when it comes down to socialization, boys they grow up playing with power. They grow up playing with, their army figures. They grow up playing with guns and just things that hint towards domination. Whereas females, we tend to be more domestically inclined. Do you think that has a part in it as well?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely think it goes down to the emotion side of things where women are continuously kind of encouraged to talk about their emotions, to have emotions, and men aren't. And so part of that afterthought is that I'm not really looking at emotions, so it's hard for me to be concerned about yours. And so then when I do the things that I do, I'm not really thinking about you because I'm not even thinking about emotions really. And so it's hard for me to have loyalty to you without emotion.
Wow. Okay, so at what point, that is a powerful point, and I say that's a powerful point because I have lived through some of my own relationships with men. It's hard for me to be concerned about your feelings because, kind of invested in myself. My question is, and if so, when do men grow out of that? When do boys grow out of that? I mean, to be honest, it's hard to lead a family unit like that. I would never want to marry a man who doesn't see me as an extension of himself and cares for me and make the provisions for me that's necessary. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it comes with time, obviously, but I think it can be different for everyone because there are different, I think, struggles that lead to certain things. For some men, it's that first long relationship, it doesn't work out. I'm like, all right, I guess maybe X, Y, and Z isn't going to work for me. And I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to settle down, and I'm ready to maybe pull out of some stubborn ways or some selfish ways. And then sometimes it takes just someone pulling and someone every day just being there and being like, all right, you got to think about someone other than you. And you have to think about me and one day kids and all those different things. But I would say, I think that's also why in a lot of cases we don't see as many high school sweethearts getting married these days. Because there's a long list of things, including social media and things like that. But it's over analyzation of things that I think causes people to extend when they get married to later on in life.
All right. Yes. Okay. So that makes sense. Last season when we did this episode, there was a woman who shared her experience, and one of the things that she said was she thinks women would be better off if we took a note out of men's book, and that is
what note?
not being invested in just one person, just being invested in yourself. Like, move with no loyalty to them, but keep yourself and keep your goals and your objectives and the things that you want at the forefront. What do you think a world like that would look like? Do you think that that's harmful? And do you think that's kind of going against the nature of what it means to be a woman?
No. So like, I think here's the thing. As people, probably part of the way that, we talk about socialization can be the world at large and the country at large and things like that, and the cities and things that you were raised in.
Right.
But a lot of times our socialization is also just like home environment. And so I probably grew up thinking like putting yourself first and your career and your goals was just something that happened. and it didn't matter whether you were a man or a woman. And so that I don't think there's necessarily a problem with. If you're saying that, like, hey, you're going to go and you're going to make the best career and the best life that you can, I'm going to go and make the best career and the best life that I can, that's not a problem. Now, when that ideal becomes that, like, we're going to do the messed up things that men do, yeah, okay. Like, I think our goal should be like making guys better and not like, let's just stoop to their level. But I do definitely think that we should all be focused on ourselves to a certain extent, but also considering others too.
Okay, so now that takes me to a movie that I saw. As soon as you said that literally re-triggered a scene that I saw in the movie. Help me out. I believe it's called Rich Crazy Asians. Is that the name of the movie? I think the movie is Rich Crazy Asians. And you see the matriarch of the family kind of intimidating, you know, a candidate for her son. And she's like, you women with your ambition, you know, you try to bury yourselves in that. She's like, but you don't realize that it takes someone that's invested and dedicated to prop up a family unit to be successful and to, you know, persevere through the generations.
Lovely of you to say it, Rachel. We are all very lucky to have each other.
That's a beautiful ring, Auntie Eleanor. I've never seen anything like it.
Nick's father had it made when he proposed to me.
It's very romantic. How did you guys meet?
Actually, they met at Cambridge. Both studying law together.
Oh, I didn't know you were a lawyer.
I wasn't. I withdrew from university when we got married.
Oh.
I chose to help my husband run a business and to raise a family. For me, it was a privilege. But for you, you may think it's old-fashioned. It's nice you appreciate this house and us being here together wrapping dumplings. But all this doesn't just happen. It's because we know to put family first instead of chasing one's passion.
And that kind of made me say, let me take a step back at myself and see how I'm organizing, you know, my principles as a person, because it makes you feel like I have to choose. Like I can't have ambition, but also have a successful family unit. So that's what made me think of what you just said. Below. Go ahead.
I will say, I think that is, I don't think there has to be either or. But I do think, so like, I don't think if we look at, we'll take Michelle and Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think that either one of them necessarily gave up their ambition. But because obviously we know how successful that Michelle Obama is.
Yeah, sorry.
But I do think we have to consider that it's very difficult to have the two most powerful people in the room.
Yeah. Okay.
Always in the room. And so it can be, that can be a difficult balance, trying to raise a family while also both of you are trying to change the world at the same time. That's a difficult thing to do. And I don't think that it's impossible, but it takes a lot of give and take, and that doesn't always have to be one-sided. It doesn't always have to be mom. Sometimes it may be 1 year it may be mom, 1 year it may be dad. You know, we may go through a 10-year stretch where it's like, all right, so-and-so's career first. And then there may be another 10-year stretch where so-and-so's career is first. But that has to be a balance that you strike. But that has to be a conversation with your partner and something that has to have a lot of forethought to, that's not just going to happen.
I agree. On to the next. A more raw question for you.
Oh, God.
When you see the pain on someone else's face that you caused, what is the internal conversation you are having with yourself as a man?
Usually regret. I think things go one of two ways. And I think that usually includes either you either regret it or you don't. And that's usually based on one of two things: how much you care about the person who is hurting. All right. For some, you may not care at all. And it's like, all right, whatever. And then which is a lot of people's reaction. Some men's reaction is like, all right, well, whatever, I don't care. I'm not worried about you. I'm not worried about this. We go back to that, on to the next one kind of stuff. And then there's this other side of things where it's like, oh, I actually messed up. Not only did I mess up, I actually hurt someone that I actually care about. And so the reality is there's not much we can do at that point, but apologize and try to take accountability for our actions. And I think you will see that a lot of men, in those moments, men hurt because they realize the mistakes of their actions, that actually had an impact on someone they cared about. And it was usually probably never worth whatever it was. So.
Do you think that men have the tools to express that they've messed up?
Yes and no. I think obviously everybody has the tools to apologize. But I also think that it's hard for men to get it because of that kind of disconnection with feelings sometimes. And so it's like, okay, I'm sorry. And I'm still guilty of this today. Okay, I'm sorry. Now what? Like I said, I was sorry. What else you want me to do?
Yeah, and it's that part right there where it's like, he's playing me, because how can you get upset about how I'm processing the hurt you put me through? So when men say, what else do you want me to do? I feel like that just kind of erases the whole apology.
And that's why we struggle, because so a lot of women feel like, oh, you trying to get over on me, and it's like, no, literally, what else? What do you want me to do? And so sometimes it's two parts. It's like, one, what do you want me to do? And then it's also that other part of like, don't feel like the punishment meets the crime. And I feel like that's also a lot of it for men is like, okay, like, sure, whatever I did was bad, and there should be a consequence, but the consequence you're talking about, it doesn't line up with punishment.
I guess the insult in that line of thinking is, how can you be sure of like the subjective consciousness of a woman? Like when she's hurting and she is left to deal with that hurt, deal with processing that hurt. And then there are often external factors. There's embarrassment, there's the feeling of betrayal. And it just feels, I just think the insult in that is you not really understanding what it takes to forgive that offense, if forgiveness is something to be considered. So,
I think men would benefit from a consequence sheet. I need to know that, like, when you do X, when the dishes are not taken, when the dishes are not washed, here's what's going to happen. When X does not happen, this is what will happen. Because then I can process that. Then I know if I ignore you and go watch a football game, boom, my consequence. And then I can ask myself, is what I'm about to do worth what's about to happen? But a lot of times we don't really think about that. So we're like, oh yeah, I'll go watch the game with the boys. Whatever, cool. And then I get home and then I'm like, you really mad about that? It wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, I knew you'd be mad, but you shouldn't be that mad. But see, if I came home and you said, here it was, I told you now, you got the kids all weekend. Like, well, I knew that on Friday night.
So, ladies, what I'm hearing is we need to start getting our notepads out and making a consequence sheet, a whole Excel spreadsheet. Share it over Google Doc, print it out, put it on the refrigerator so the men folk know what's coming if they misbehave. Accountability. I think that's fair. The thing is that I think most women are probably scratching their eyebrow, like, what? Raising their eyebrow. There are just some offenses we don't see coming. You know what I mean? It's like some things, it's like I never would have thought that he would think to do something like that.
We're creative.
And that's the thing where it's like, oh, are they really acting out of unknowingness that they're offending me? Or is this premeditated? That's when we get into the fine line of, am I being a sucker or am I being gracious right now?
I will say, I think in very few cases are things premeditated. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah.
But and it takes so I think there are two parts to that. I think it takes, like, you have to look at, like, one, like, when we say premeditated, how premeditated are we talking? Like,
hold up, let's just pause because that goes into the last question and I want to
save it. Gotcha.
Save it. Yeah. So before we get there, this conversation is just having a natural flow of its own, but keep that thought.
I got you.
Does the way men, are the way men socialized into masculinity, does that upset the ability for them to be emotionally available as partners?
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt.
Spell it out in the most simple way for a guy that probably does not understand why him and his girl cannot connect about the most simple things.
So it's hard for me to be there for you for feelings I've never felt.
Okay, that's a powerful quote. Say that again.
It's hard for me to be there for you for feelings that I've never felt. Okay. And so with that, it can be very hard for me to emotionally support you because I don't get what's happening. Like, I don't get this heartbreak that you're going through. I don't get why you're so upset. And so, yes, the natural inclination is to be like, okay, I'm sorry. I hope things get better, But it kind of always goes back to, and I think this is why you see with men a lot, we just get frustrated because we don't get it. Like, all right, like, I don't know what else you want me to do. Even and this goes whether it's our fault or not. And I can speak for myself, especially when it's not my fault. It's like, okay. And for me, I'm very solutions oriented. So I don't do good with emotion. Now, I can solve your problem. You bring me whatever problem it is, baby, I've got you. Let's solve it and let's move on. But if we spend too long talking about the problem, just like, what are we doing? We wasting time. Like, I got your solution. Your solution's right here. Solve the problem, fix it, and let's go. There's no reason for us to waste all this time crying or talking about it or any of those things when, boom, let's just solve it. And so I think that kind of goes back to kind of the difference between men and women is men, it's hard for them to feel it. So a lot of times it's just like, let's fix it.
Okay. Speaking on behalf of myself, when I am, I guess, spurring some, I guess you said it's frustration that you guys feel when it feels like you guys are being interrogated about, this is what you did to me, this is how it made me feel. That's not to punish you all. When I do that, I guess my tools are association and sort. That's what I'm hoping my man will get out of it. So I'm sitting and I'm explaining to you in detail what you did to offend me, how it made me feel, why I don't want you to do that anymore, in hopes that you will take that, internalize it, and then use that as your own navigational system. Like, okay, when I did this last time, this made her feel this way. So let me, sort this out. I know what to associate her emotional response to this with what action. I'm not going to do that anymore. That's personally why I give all the context, like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's keep revisiting it until you get it. Like, you get it. But it's interesting hearing from a man's perspective, like, no, that's just frustrating. I want to get to the solution. If you get to the solution without understanding the issue, the real issue, the rooted issues of it, you're likely to repeat it again.
And that's fair. I think so. I think sometimes that is kind of that tug and pull is because you say things like we're gonna keep revisiting it, and it's like, and so as a teacher, like it's one of these things of like, how do I demonstrate learning? And so everything in school is about demonstrating learning, and so a lot of men are like, okay, how do I demonstrate? Like, what does it mean to demonstrate learning of specific topic? Right? Because I need us to move on. We done reviewed the topic. We done had the class. We done reviewed the topic. When do I get to take the test and be done with the topic? And it seems like for men, it's like, all right, we keep talking about the same class over and over and over again. I'm tired of revisiting it. And I think that's where that frustration comes in, because it's like, what needs to be said to convey that we have learned the topic that we're talking about? It's like, what would you need to hear for you to be like, oh, okay, got you?
We really need the reassurance that, which I know you are saying it's hard for men to do, but the emotional affirmation that this won't happen again. And to the best of my abilities, I will not do this again. Because how can you advance forward if you're always busy retracing the steps of where you went wrong? You can't move forward like that. As much as men hate, that frustration of, here's what you did, I need to spell it out because it's hurt my feelings. Us women don't like doing it. We're losing precious time. We could be having fun. We could be living the best years of our life, making a beautiful love story. But if you have to use that precious time that should be used advancing forward, having to revisit things that have already been revisited in the past, it gets to a point where it's like, is he hearing me? Is he here with me? Is he present? That's the main thing that I get frustrated about in relationships, and I know that my friends get frustrated about it. Are you present? Do you feel me? Like, do you feel me in my soul? You feel me? So that's the frustration. And I think if men just showed a receipt of, I receive what you're saying, babe, I got you, it won't happen again, and then made honest on that, things would be so much easier. Don't you agree, Mr. Jewell?
But how often does a man say, I got you, I understand, it won't happen again?
And then they do it 30 minutes later, if not 3 weeks. 3 weeks is a gracious time period, but they turn around and do it right again.
Maybe. Okay, but then here's what happens, is that the next time that he says that, he'll say, all right, I got you, babe. I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Now, in that very same moment, as soon as he says that, 9 times out of 10, the conversation continues. You go, but are you sure? Do you actually hear me? And so it's that revisiting that I think makes men frustrated, because it's like, I said I got you. I told you it's not going to happen again. What else do you want me to say? Because I've already said I'm not going to do it again. What more is there to say to it? What can I show you to demonstrate that I've learned in this moment? Because I can show you over time, but what can I do right now?
I think it's less about saying and more about really doing. You know what I mean? I feel like the profession is just your first attempt of making good on what you're saying. That we want that. We truly do. We want you to profess it. So that way we can say, well, you said on March the 2nd at 3:57 p.m. that you said this. But I think women have this very special tool called an intuition, and it allows us to feel our way through things. And I think I know as a woman, we can tell when men are just being performative and saying things because they want us to have a satisfaction with what they're saying. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's like the performative goodness of, okay, I know you want to hear this, so I'm going to say it. But your principles, it hasn't set in with you, and you're not really going to reorganize whatever your attitude to, perform at this level, so, genuinely.
Do you ever feel like, does it matter how much you talk about it? So like, say the lesson was not learned in the first 15 minutes. Does the lesson get learned at the hour mark? Or is if the lesson's not learned in the first 15 minutes, it's never going to get learned?
It depends on who you ask. And I feel like this has been the struggle of my womanhood because I feel like there's this dichotomy where people say they take the Maya Angelou route, right? So it's when a person shows you who they are the first time, believe them, act according to knowledge. So if he can't get it in the first 15 minutes, you should know, sweetie, that he's never going to learn. But then you do have those situations where, as you said, it's okay to extend some grace and some patience, and you groom each other because that's what partnership is all about. The winning question is how to know the difference. How do you know the difference? Because let's say you proceed forward and you give a valiant effort to be patient, to be gracious, to wait it out and hope that he learns, after the 15 minutes. People are not going to applaud your valiant effort of persevering through that. They're going to look at you and say, well, you're silly. Didn't you see the imminent signs of danger at first? Yeah. And so that's where you have to choose.
You either win or you lose.
And
you're absolutely, like, people are going to say, great job, you won. How'd you do it? And it's great.
Yes, right.
Or you're going to lose, and they'll be like, well, you should have known. You're like, but if I won, you'd have never said that.
Perfect. Yeah, you get it. Yeah. You see some wedding, anniversaries where they're celebrating 50 and 60 years. And when you ask them how did they do it, they say communication, or a lot of forgiveness, a lot of communication. And then when they go into detail and they detail for you some of the things they have to hurdle over, we look at that and say, wow, so courageous of you. You did it. But other people that don't get to the 50 and 60 year mark, we look at them and say, wow, we feel sorry for all the years you wasted,
So, like, here's the thing. I think this is the number one struggle, like, in relationships today.
Right.
It is, one, I think it's social media. And I say that because it's this idea of comparison. So we can see what's going on over there, and they look so happy and everything's great. And we should be that. We should be what they have over there. Right. So that's one. And then two, I think it's because of that comparison that I wonder, is this right? And so I think 50, 60 years ago, people won't have this really comparison. So they just do it. They just keep moving. They just keep pushing because they don't really have anything else to see, to look at. So they just do it. Whereas I think for us, we constantly are having to ask the question of, like, how long do I endure sadness? Do I endure unhappiness before it's time to go? And, like, that's just that's a hard question for both men and women, because that's really the deciding factor. Is today the day that we fix things?
Yes.
Or is today just another day that's bad? And so do we go through a year of bad and then we hit the promised land? Yeah. Or, like, is it just more bad? And, like, we don't know. We never know. Like, I have no idea if tomorrow is going to be the first day of the best year of my life with you, or if I am just another day of being miserable. I have no idea. And so some days it's just like, just not quitting.
Yeah.
Just not quitting. And I don't know. And maybe one day we'll figure it out. Hopefully we will. But yeah, that's crazy for me.
Jay, I think you just stole the show with that. Like, that is an entire inspiration, an entire lesson within itself. And that's one of the main reasons why I love talking to you. You're probably the wisest friend that I have. And you've been beyond your years since I've met you. Truly, you have. I remember one of my first heartbreaks, you were the first person I came to. And to this day, I kid you not, I screenshotted the message and I saved it in my personal archives. And to this day, years later, I still go back and revisit what you said. You said something to the effect of, you'll get it wrong 99 times, but that one time that you do it, love will be the most magical, the most transformative thing. get back on the horse and keep riding. And anybody, you know, some people, they just give you these pleasantries to sift through, and you're like, you know, I appreciate the effort, whatever, but I'm too smart. I know better. But when you say thanks to me, Jason, I really believe it. So thank you for being that person. You're awesome, Jay. Okay. Very welcome. Now let's get back into your question. I hope that you held on to your notes, because I want to know. I feel like men are too brilliant, too smart, too powerful. They y'all have to be strategic. You guys are world leaders. You guys dominate in your industries. So you can't wield that type of responsibility without being highly intelligent and highly effective in getting things done. So when men come to the most precious and valuable relationships and say, "Oh, I didn't know any better," that feels like an insult. So I ask this question: how much of a man's misbehaviors are premeditated?
So that, first off, we gotta clarify something. That assumes that you are in the most precious relationship around.
If you're in a relationship, you guys wouldn't. Yes, you guys would waste time with people that don't matter. But
Right, we gotta clarify that point.
you're right, Jay. But assuming you're in a relationship where you really care about the girl, you really have a lot of love for them, you might in fact love them. Why does it feel like, I don't want to put my own biases on it, is it premeditated or not? The misbehaviors, or what the woman or the person you're in a relationship would perceive to be misbehaving. Is it premeditated or not?
So I would say that a lot of times I don't think things are premeditated. Because if you're really going to say that, like, this is the most precious thing, like this is a relationship that I truly value, it's a lot harder to have premeditated actions, right? Because see, premeditation says that I really thought about this. I thought about the consequences. I thought about my actions, and I just didn't care. And so that kind of runs contradictory to, like, this is the most important thing, this is the most valuable thing in my life. Those things are really hard to reconcile. Now, when you look at things not being premeditated, it's a lot easier to make just really stupid decisions. And men are really great at making really stupid decisions. And so let me think about this. How do I want to say this? Men can do something with no regret in the moment.
Okay.
And immediately after, realize that they just made the dumbest thing they could have ever done. And it happens just like that. There's literally, you're over here making the dumbest mistake ever, and now you're here. And you know it. And you know it's the dumbest thing you could have ever done. But it's already been done. And so, no, I really don't think a lot of men have premeditation, especially when we're actually talking about being in relationships that you value and you care about. Because now, if you don't care about it, yeah, you can premeditate it all day. Who cares? And that goes back to, like, I think that original conversation of, like, having forethought without loyalty to others. Like, if I don't care about you, then I don't necessarily care about my actions towards you either.
Wow. You know, these conversations are always great because you get a lot of wisdom, and you get to, see inside the man's psyche. But then there's some really painful truths that come out, and it's like, oh, that's why he's acting like that. All right. I would like to challenge you a bit further and say, well, when you say it isn't premeditation, then what would you classify lying, or the need for alibis, or the need to delete text messages, or the need to bring other people into your story? To me, that feels like premeditation, because obviously you know that I'm going to have a reaction that you don't like, one that you would not prefer. So you're doing other things to try to manipulate what it appears to be, the reality of it. So, if you feel the need to delete the message, that would trigger me, and that would, take away me knowing information or having access to information that you wouldn't want to come out. That feels like premeditation. So it feels like you plan to hurt me.
No, see, because I might have, premeditation says I planned to do the action. Now, so to me, you may not have planned to do the action. Now that it has happened, I'm going to clean up the crime scene. Because that's what deleting text message is. That says I'm cleaning up the crime scene. Let me establish my alibi. Let me figure out all these other things. So you may not have premeditated the action, but now that the action's happened, I need to clean up the crime scene.
That makes sense. That's fair. That makes sense. Hey, I've been there. It makes sense to me.
Because, and part of it goes, and like, I'm not saying it makes it right, but I do think that sometimes part of it is that I realize that I messed up, and because I messed up, I'm trying to cover up some of that pain. That I know that those text messages might hurt you. I know that where I was might hurt you. And so I'm going to try to cover that up, because deep down, I am going to be hurt when you're crying. I am going to hurt when you hurt. And I'm going to realize that I've made a mistake. And to a certain extent, the only way that I can see us avoiding that at this point is for me to hide the evidence. Again, that don't make it right. You're still guilty of the crime. But some people feel like it's the best you got at that time.
You know what, Jay? The reason why I did this show was truly to get men's perspective on things. Our questions, you all's answers. And when I tell you, in a million years, I would have never thought of it that way. Never thought of it that way. I strictly saw it. I was on the attack, the defense. Like, no, you meant to hurt me. You set out to hurt me. You're lying. You're manipulative. But wow. Okay. You gave me a new perspective. You gave me a new perspective. You just saved a lot of men out there, Jay.
Did not save myself, but okay.
That was really good. That was really good. My question to you, you didn't plan for this. I didn't send this question to you, but something on my dome right now. Well, first of all, congratulations to you. You are recently engaged and you had quite a noteworthy proposal. Would you like to tell the people about it?
So last year, my family and I took a trip to Egypt. And so I proposed to my girlfriend at the time in front of the Great Pyramids of Egypt. So we're excited that we will be getting married. We decided to move up the wedding, and we'll be getting married the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So very excited for that.
Congratulations. I'm super excited. I still remember you in elementary school with your Scooby-Doo snacks and
those are still good to
Scooby-Doo lunchbox, and now you're going to be someone's entire full husband. Wow. Husband and a dad. Congrats to you, Jay.
Thank you. Thank you.
My question to you, do you feel that young men, have an incentive to get married? Is there any incentive in marriage for men?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, don't just say that because Shalaya might be standing nearby. Be honest.
Nah, I just know I know she'll see the recording on Facebook. Yeah, I mean, like, absolutely. I wouldn't. I've never been one to do things that I didn't think were the best thing out there, you know. And I will say that for me, we waited a while, and it was a couple years in before, because I do think there are reasons for marriage. I think that marriage is for life, and I think that men get to spend the rest of their lives with their best friends the same way women do. So, like, if you enjoy hanging out with your best friend every day, like, why wouldn't you? If you enjoy a good tax break, why wouldn't you?
Okay.
But no, I mean, I honestly, like, when you really think about spending the rest of your life with someone and getting to sit in Cracker Barrel rockers and hanging out and knowing that someone has your back. Not today, not tomorrow, but next year and 20 years and 50, 60 years down the road, that you don't even have to think about who's in your corner. If you don't want that, I mean, that's not a man or woman thing. If you don't want that, then that's on you.
I love that answer, Jay. I absolutely love that answer. I asked because I saw something online from a political leader that I somewhat admire. And he said that men do not have an incentive to get married. He said there's nothing in it for the man. In fact, they assume most of the risk once they enter into the institution of marriage. And he was an older gentleman. And it just made me think about if young men share the same insights. But I am glad to see that you're different. You've always been the anomaly, though. So hope that thought pattern will spread. Because I definitely think there's incentives for both parties.
Absolutely. I think, but the most important thing is about who you marry. And for some, you're right. If you're not marrying your best friend, then no, I don't advise it. Because the advantages are not worth the other difficulties. So, if you look at X, Y, and Z, and you're having to deal with someone you don't like for whatever, and you've got to take care of the kids and work 2 jobs to pay the bills, well, no, that's not an advantage, and that's fine. But if you come home working 1 or 2 jobs and you're around people that you love being around every day, I probably wouldn't mind picking up a second job because I'm around people that I want to be around. But if you ain't got that, then no, it ain't worth it for anybody, ever.
I agree. Last question for you, Jay. You're getting married pretty soon, next month. Where in the world is my invite?
It's coming. I'm gonna have to send out a lot after this video.
Listen, okay. You have a little while. This won't premiere until Thursday. So. Jason, Jewell, thank you so much for tuning in and sharing the stage with us today. Our questions, their answers, life lessons, and lattes. You have just watched episode 4. As we close out, Jay, if there's someone watching who is, going through their first heartbreak, we both know how traumatic that can be, especially when it's, when you're young. What can you say to the young people out there who may be watching?
Try it again. We get better with age. That I think a lot of guys make mistakes early on. I know that I did. And I think it often takes one relationship or one heartbreak to really kind of put you in a place where you're ready with the wisdom that you need for the next step or the next relationship. And so you got to try again. It may take a little bit of time, but people tend to learn from their mistakes.
Beautiful. I don't think I could have said it any better myself. Jason, once again, thank you so much for tuning in, praying that God bless you and Shalea and your beautiful family and your beautiful union that will come to be next month. Until then, make sure you share this broadcast. We will see you next week. Be sure to tune in with your lattes, and thank you so much for watching.
Thanks for having me.